I welcome you to POWERinU's complimentary webinar. This is entitled Making Relationships Pandemic Proof. I now have the honor and privilege of introducing our tonight's speakers. It's a husband and wife team or tandem of Dr. Omi Romero and Rosan Romero. Omi is a management consultant and organization development specialist. OMI continues to engage individuals and organizations in their journey of seeking clarity on their sense of identity, purpose, and destiny. Most of his consulting engagements revolve around corporate purpose, vision, mission, values, culture, and strategy. He believes in bringing faith-based values to the workplace, driven by a strong sense of mission. He recently launched the book, The Boat is Sinking, The Power of Rock Bottom. And I had the privilege of having him as a guest to talk about that book several months ago in this webinar. Meanwhile, Rosan is a DISC certified trainer and facilitator, and she specializes in adversity, teamwork, and relationship building programs. Rosan is a sought after speaker on the subject of adversity, speaking from her own experiences of God, not only in spite of, but mostly because of her illness. She's also the best selling author of Amusing Grace. I've personally read that very beautiful book, a collection of articles from her well-loved column in Kerigma magazine, Kitchen Scribbles. In 2015, she launched Amusing Grace, a Second Helping, which was nominated for Best Inspirational Book for the Cardinal Sin Book Awards in the same year. Everyone, let us all welcome our speakers for tonight, Dr. Omi Romero and Rosan Romero.
Thank you, Elaine.
Good
Good evening to
evening.
all.
Hi.
Thank you for joining us tonight, and we believe that this will be a good time for you to really look into your relationships and see how your relationships can really be pandemic proof. So we thank you for joining us. We believe that you are here. We're making that assumption that you are here because you value your relationships.
Yes.
Thank you for being here. And I'm going to ask Rosan just to introduce some things, other details about us. Rosan?
Okay. Omi and I have been married for 3 decades, close to 4 decades na. And we have 2 daughters. One is Rinka, who's married, and we have 2 grandchildren by Rinka. And then we have another daughter who's single. Omi comes from, Omi is the youngest in a family of 7. I come from a family where there are 7 children. I'm the only girl. So I'm the only girl in a brood of 7.
Favorite son-in-law.
Favorite son-in-law.
Favorite son-in-law. And maybe some of you may be wondering, where have we spent most of our quarantine period since
Here.
March? Dito kami sa BF Parañaque. You know, we live in a world of relationships. We'd like to start that off by saying, here we shared some pictures here. On the left here, you can see that was our family gathering, June of 2019. One of our nieces got married. Pero tingnan nyo naman, so many from us. And then you'll see here on the right bottom, these are professional relationships, our relationships in business. Before this, some of you were asking, hey, is this talk going to be just for family, for personal relationships, or saying right now, this is going to cover, and things that we're going to share here will cover even your work relationships. Yeah. And Rosan, I'll tell them about we've been doing consulting for 24 years, and we do strategy, we do implementation, we do structure systems, all of those things. But here's one lesson that we learned. No matter how good your strategies are, no matter how good your products or services are, when relationships are not working, it won't work. It won't work. So today we want to give you value by sharing lessons, key lessons that we've seen applied and learned in both family, personal, in business relationships. This is something that I picked up. Actually, earlier, well, let me read this to you. Our personal, it says here that our personal and social
Mm-hmm.
worlds contain anywhere from 78 to 250 people, averaging about what? 154
54.
individuals. And thank you to Robin Dunbar who said this. But I also want to share with you a story. We have a partner organization in Atlanta, Georgia called Habits and Attitudes of Leaders. And they made a very interesting study. The study they made was how for a typical introvert, so later we'd like to find out who among you are introverts.
Introverts.
For a typical introvert who lives as an average of 70 to 80 years. Why 70 to 80 years? Because the
That's the
Bible says
lifespan.
that, yeah, that the lifespan right now of people is 70 to 80 years. But maybe because of modern science,
Stem cell.
baka 120 na, 120 na. But anyway, the question was how many relationships or how many people will a typical introvert influence in a lifespan of 70 to 80 years? Any guesses?
Introvert yan ah.
Introvert. Any guesses? Anyway, uh, I'll share with you the result. 10,000 people, an estimated 10,000 people. So right now, there's about for each one of us here. Can you imagine? Assume that you were what do you call this, introvert, living an average lifespan of 70 to 80 years. You have potential influence in
Mm.
relationships with about 10,000 people. Can you imagine? So
Imagine
this
that.
is the kind of impact
Yeah.
that we will have. So this is a statement that Rosanne was saying before we were preparing for this. She said, making our relationships pandemic proof is about making relationships thrive with or without pandemic.
Yeah.
What did what did you have in mind,
No,
Rosanne, when
it's
you
not so much the pandemic that defines the relationship as it is the relationship, the good relationship that defines everything around and conquers a pandemic, overcomes a pandemic.
so that's why so we're saying this is so important because pandemic just happens to be a circumstance. It's not our destiny.
Yeah,
But the relationships will stay there with or without pandemic.
pandemics.
So to get this started, the late Stephen Covey had a very important point. He said, strength lies in differences, not in similarities. So this is so important. You want to keep your relationships pandemic proof, make sure that you recognize this, that our strength, be it family, be it personal
Yes.
relationship, be it business, will lie in our differences, not in similarities. Somebody jokingly said, in Tagalog, this can sound funny. Lahat tayo may diferensya.
Totoo
Anyway,
din.
totoo din, di ba? It's just
Totoo
good for us
din.
to keep in mind. You want to keep relationships pandemic proof? Remember, we all have differences, and that's where our strength lies. Now, Stephen Covey, the late Stephen Covey, has a son. His name is Stephen M.R. Covey, and he wrote a book um, entitled "The Speed of Trust." Highly recommendable. And I picked this quotation from him. He said, "We judge ourselves by our intentions. Others judge us by our behaviors." Why is that important? Mainly because have you ever encountered a situation where people give you feedback that so and so is irritated at you, or so and so
Mm.
dislikes you, or so and so was hurt by what you said, and then your immediate response is, I I didn't have any bad intentions. I only had good intentions, which is why I did this
Mm.
or said that.
Mm.
Where's the problem there? The problem lies in intention and behavior not
Not
being aligned,
aligned.
not being aligned. Does it happen to you, Rosanne?
Yeah, a lot, a lot. When you think of something, you're trying to do something, you're trying to accomplish something, and then people give you feedback na bakit ka ganon? So, yung dating mo, the way your behavior aligned with what you had in mind are two different things.
Yes, very important.
Yeah.
Hey, Jackie from Belfast, do you understand Tagalog or do you speak Irish? Jackie? No, we're just being sensitive because there might be some
Who don't,
who
yeah.
may not. Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you, Jackie. And okay. Belfast, interesting place.
Mm.
Keep this in mind. Oh, by the way, when we gave this the talking points of this short journey with you, we told Elaine, we told Power in You that there will be two major talking points. One is we want to share the 3 A's of keeping our relationships pandemic proof, and we want to share about the 4 Q's that guide our relationship. So
Mm.
this is one of it, very important. Aware, accept, adapt. What does it mean? First, you want your relationships to be pandemic proof. Be aware of how you come across to people. Sa Tagalog, ano yung dating natin?
Kailangan alam mo kung
Kailangan, ano yung dating mo. In English, what is your arrival? Nako, mali. Wrong English. Okay?
No, you need to know how you come across.
How you come across, yes. So be aware of that. So very important. You want to keep relationships pandemic proof. First, look at yourself and see, am I aware how I come across to people? Second, accept differences. So, when you've accepted differences in relationships, we can almost say half the battle is won when you accept differences, because that sort of relaxes you. You don't have to change people. And then the third is adapt. So aware, accept, adapt. And maybe I'm going to do an exercise. Can everyone clasp your hands this way?
Put your hands together.
And my question to you is, what thumb is on top? Is it left over right or right over left? Okay? You may be, mahirap naman ipasagot kayo na mag-text ni sumasagot left over right. And some who are right over left, right? Okay. Now I'm going to share with you an interesting thing. When you are left over right, they say that you are right brain, which means you tend to be creative, out of the box thinker. Sabi nila, hindi ako nagsasabi, nagko-quote lang ako.
Psychology.
And then there are some of you who said right over left, right? Like Vanessa. Vanessa, you're right over left. Pagka right over left daw, they say that you are left brain or logical, step-by-step thinker. So, pwede, no? Pwede. Okay. Now I'm going to ask you to do the opposite. If you were originally left over right, do it now the opposite. Right over left. Or if you were right over left, baliktarin mo rin. And tell me on the chat how that feels. Does it feel good? Comfortable? Oh, sabi ni Elaine, unnatural. Thank you, Elaine.
Yes.
Jackie, it does not feel right. Sabi ni Vanessa, uncomfortable. Okay, somebody said uneasy. Okay, so thank God. The reason why we want to do this is to illustrate adapting. Okay, in adapting, for Gina, thank you, uneasy also. We want to say, Giselle, thank you for sharing uncomfortable, because we're warning you, we're giving you a heads up to adapt may be uncomfortable.
But
doable. So it may be uneasy for you, maybe difficult, maybe uncomfortable, but nevertheless possible.
Yeah.
So aware, accept, adapt. But what are we talking about? What are we going to adapt? What are we going to change? So think of this as your natural behavior. But when you put it the opposite way, you're saying you're adapting your behavior to make your relationships pandemic proof. And we'd like to share this very important equation. Behavior is what you do with who you are, where you are. Why is this important? You've noticed how some people can behave differently in work, and then come home and see that they behave differently. And some of us jokingly say split personality. Actually, it's not the split personality. Actually, the behavior changes because the environment changes.
So they are adapting.
We're adapting. And so it's very important to keep this in mind, because in the next slides, we're going to share with you the DISC model of behavior that tells us our natural behavior pattern. So introducing the DISC model of behavior. And we'd like to say this is so important so that we can understand how we misunderstand
Each other.
others. And what was the other way also, Rosan? We can
How others.
others can understand how they misunderstand us.
Yes.
That's right. Okay, so here very quickly, the D in the DISC model of behaviors stands for dominance. Think of being a director. This is the kind of person who likes to direct, tells others what to
What
do,
to do.
and they can be very results oriented. They like to be in control.
Where
They're
to go. Where to
strong-willed.
eat.
Yeah, even in small matters like simple matters like where to eat lunch. Pre-COVID, so where do we go? The D likes to dictate where to go.
Mhm.
And having gone to the place where he said we should go, this the D person likes to dictate what to eat, what to
Yeah.
order. Wow, grabe. Really in control. And then when it's time to pay the bill, the D likes to say, okay, pay for it now. So really, so being in control, being forceful. But what are we saying about the D's? That does the D wake up in the morning to harm you? No,
No.
it's just their natural behavior style. And to some extent, all of us have all of this DISC, but one tends to be dominant. Next, the I stands for influence, or think of interaction. This is the person who is very outgoing,
People oriented.
people oriented, cannot stand silence. They have to talk,
Mm-mm.
they have to strike a conversation, very enthusiastic and optimistic. And they're motivated by jobs that influence or interact with others. These are the people who enjoy working in a situation where there's a lot of social contact, network building. The
Mm-mm.
D likes a work situation where they can be in control, set directions.
Mm-mm.
And I put here very friendly and high spirited. Sometimes give them 3 minutes and they can become your relative. They'll trace
They'll find
connections,
out.
they'll find out. And very warm and very accepting of people. So that's the high I. My profile tends to be a combination of influence and dominance. So, but Rosan says it's. What did you say about my being high
I
I?
said, no, you're really just a high I. He's
They,
outgoing. He likes to be around people. He's energized by talking to people there.
and they always joke me that wherever we go, they always
Oh,
make a
yeah.
bet.
My daughters and I say, like, if we go to another country and we enter an elevator, my daughters will say, I bet you someone will come in whom daddy knows. True enough, almost all the time, someone will come into the elevator, say, oh, pare, then he'll find someone
It
he
seems,
knows.
yeah, it seems like, there's always somebody I know everywhere I go. Okay, what about the S? The S describes a lot of the typical behavior of Rosan. It's for steadiness. For us from the north, it's
Steady.
steadiness. Okay, steadiness. And these are people who are even-tempered. Mabait ang S. They're the natural team players. I'm not saying the D and I are not mabait. Okay, I'm just
Yes.
saying on first impression, the steadiness, you can tell right away is very accommodating, very accepting, and they reflective. They like to listen, very patient.
Mm.
They're not complainers. People who don't like to complain, but and what's their goal? Their goal is predictability. They hate surprises,
Yeah.
and Rosan, in the case of Rosan, who has very high S in steadiness, likes to do all the tasks one after another. She's very thorough.
Yeah.
And when she goes,
Even in the supermarket, I go by lane, by aisle. I mean, I go
yeah,
by aisle.
even before she buys anything.
Mm.
Anyway, and when we share this with teachers, we have a program for
Yes.
teachers and parents called Figuring Kids Out, and we warn teachers that when you see a student who's high in S, don't traumatize them or don't shock them by saying, Iho, lumipat ka nga ng upuan dito. No, if you see a high S person, we jokingly say, tell that person, Iho, next year lilipat ka ng upuan na
Iba
nakikita
na
mo doon,
seatmate mo.
iba na seatmate mo. Give them time to adjust because what's important to the S? Predictability.
Yeah.
This is about making relationships pandemic proof by knowing natural behaviors of people. Then, conscientiousness.
So,
Do you want to talk about conscientiousness, Rosanne?
okay, the C is a very orderly person. The C likes to be precise, likes to be exact. An example of this is when we were in Indonesia, we lived with a family. And the woman of the house one time told me, Ross, we're going to have guests tonight. I'll go na to work. Ikaw na bahala. So she was annoyed because I kept asking her how many people. And she said, basta we have guests. Sa akin, what was important was I needed to know how many plates to put out, how many spoons and forks, knives, glasses. But to her, important lang was, basta we're having guests tonight. So that's the kind of interaction or dynamic that we have. No? Sa kanya, okay lang. Sa akin, I need to know ilang taong dadating, how much do I cook, ganyan. So that's the
Conscientious,
C.
yeah.
Conscientious person, and I tend to be very private about things. I am normally disconfiado. I'm skeptical whether it's about a person or about a situation. I'm normally always weighing. I always weigh things there. I'm always weighing things.
They say that the conscientiousness person, I mean, you're thinking of relationships you have now, tends to take longer in making decisions. These are the classmates we had in elementary and high school, if you recall, who already, taking an exam, that they were done, but they refused to pass their papers. Why? Because they were doing double, triple, quadruple, quintuple checking to make sure, so they can take longer. Okay. Now, there among this DISC, I just wanted to share, very important, that on the top here, the D and the I's tend to be the extroverts. They tend to be assertive. And then the S and the C's, these are the ones we said in a typical lifespan of 70 to 80 years will influence or have relationships with about 10,000 people. Steadiness and conscientiousness. Introvert tends to be passive. They say that the S and the C listen more than talk. But the D's and the I's, we tend to talk more than listen. Kaya very common daw sa amin yung
foot in mouth
disease. And then the D's and the C's, if you put them together, they're very task-oriented. So they can come across to you, if this is a work situation, as the people who are just focused about getting things done. And the I and S, who are people-oriented, tend to be uncomfortable and say, all they think about is work. Yung mga task-oriented naman, they say, all they think about is are the people. Kwentuhan ng kwentuhan yan. Yeah, fellowship. So these are the differences that we need to be aware of if we want to make sure that our relationships are pandemic proof, that we are aware of how we come across to others, aware also of differences. We accept differences and then learn how to adapt. Ngayon, punta naman tayo dito. How do we adapt? I think this is important. People have different goals. You saw how the D, diba? The D, the goal is to be in control, to have results. The I, affirmation, encouragement. The S, predictability. The C, quality and correctness. Wow, grabe, no? Iba-iba, and if we don't have this perspective, mahihirapan tayo to adapt. So people have different goals, perspectives, different fears. The D has a fear of what? Losing control. The S has a fear of what? Oh, sudden changes, di ba? The C has a fear of what? Of being incorrect, not being quality conscious. The I has a fear what? Of being rejected, of not having good relationships. So these are very important to keep in mind, because now I'm going to go to how do we adapt to people now? Question, what's the golden rule?
The golden rule is, he has the gold, makes the rules. No, the golden rule is do unto others what you want to be done unto you.
Yes.
So or do for others what you want them to do for you, or don't do unto others what you don't want done to you. There. In short, that's the golden rule.
And what would be an application of that? If it was does anyone have a birthday this week? This week of the December December 1 until next week. If anyone has a birthday this week, this is how the golden rule will
A
apply.
golden rule, if let's say I like plants, my tendency is to give my friend, my best friend, a plant, thinking, well, I like a plant, so she has to like a plant. In Omi's case, Omi loves fountain pens and ball pens. So if it's my birthday, his tendency is to give me what he wants. He'll give me a pen. He'll give me a fountain pen. And that's how the golden rule
Works.
operates. Yeah.
But when we say aware, accept, adapt, so that we can keep our relationships pandemic proof, why are we highlighting this golden rule? Because we want to share with you another rule. It's called the platinum rule.
That's the better
which
rule.
means do to others as they want it done to them. So going back to the birthday analogy we were sharing, if it's a birthday of a friend, I don't go looking around for a gift that I want to receive.
Yes.
I go looking for a gift that I know my friend will like.
likes. Yeah.
So do to others as they want it done to them. So how do we apply this now in making sure that our relationships are pandemic proof? One, you'll be surprised that in the Bible there's a faith-based principle that applies to this. In Romans
Yeah.
12:10 it says, outdo one another in showing honor. Because some of you have asked in relationships, who makes the adjustment? Tayo ba
Correct.
o yung ka-relationship natin? And here we're saying what? We make the adjustment,
Yeah.
right? We make the adjustment. And in Romans 12:10 it says, outdo one another in showing honor. Mauna na tayo.
Yeah. So
Let's
we
do
don't
it.
wait like the way it'll work. In the way it should work between Omi and myself is, I don't wait for him to honor and respect me. I do my part first without thinking of how he's gonna express it. Parang ganon. So you outdo each other. Magunahan na kayo sa ganon.
In the work situation, we've seen examples, let's say even at board of directors level, where this is applied, where they see differences. Outdoing one another and showing honor is like not so much giving in, but anticipating what is the need of someone, understanding where it's coming from, and making the right adjustments, making appropriate adjustments. So how do we do that in the practical? Okay, let's go to the D. Recognize that the D wants to be in control. That's a very important thing. And so how do we adapt to that? Let them decide. Give them a choice. We'll tell you a story.
Example, yeah.
Our eldest daughter, just among us, okay? Our eldest daughter, Rinka, is a high D. And a simple thing when they were,
When they were small.
when they were small, or maybe teenagers, we would tell a simple thing like telling them to clean their room. This is how it goes. Because Rinka is very high D, this is how we tell her how to clean, to give her instructions to tidy up. Rinka, you need to clean your room. When do you want to do it? Today or tomorrow? Oh, kita mo? Ibang-iba, di ba?
Yeah.
It's not just telling them what to do, but giving them a choice. And then she thinks and says, Dad, tomorrow I'll do it. And that feels better for them because they decided when they will do it. Okay?
They need that. They
need to be in control. And know that they are persistent even through failure. So don't be surprised with the high D people that you're with at work or even in your families na, they're one failure after another and they're still at it. Well, that's them.
Another example is the purser with the D, the airplane, diba?
Yeah.
When we travel, I travel with a wheelchair, and it always becomes a problem when we need to load the wheelchair inside the airplane or under. Syempre, our preference is to have it there in the aisle near us where we are in the cabin. And one time Omi did this. He decided to go up to the purser and told
not to the purser, to the pilot.
He went straight to the pilot and said, sir, this is our problem. We need a wheelchair here. And we can do this. You can take it apart and put it together. You can put this under here. But you decide.
Which one goes into the plane and which one goes under?
Which was magic because it worked. When Omi said, but you decide, sir. Right away, I said, well, I think we can put it inside the plane.
and know that they're naturally competitive. Kahit walang contest. I have a friend, I'll say his name, Jordan Polotan. We're just cycling here around here, and he's always wanting to have a race, who gets where faster,
Yeah.
parang I go cycling for relaxation, but he goes there to compete. And take note about the D. Accept that they are direct and oftentimes blunt in their
Mm-mm.
communication. So let's not be offended. Let's just accept it, and they're not intimidated by conflict. Even at work, the D's can behave this way. They can raise their
Have a
voice, raise a
shouting
point,
match.
yeah,
Yeah.
shouting match, and then look at their watch and say, "It's 12 o'clock. Let's have lunch." Yung mga I, the S, and the C's, di ba nag-aaway yun? Hindi nag-aaway. The D, natural na natural
Yeah.
yan. So, the D, you want to adapt to them, give answers that are direct, and don't be intimidated by their direct communication
Mm-mm.
style. Let's go to the high I. How to adapt to the high I? Recognize that they're optimistic and enthusiastic. They like friendly conversation. So let's not be too formal. Invite them for coffee.
Mm-mm.
Pero
Mm-mm.
mahirap ngayon, COVID, di ba? Be friendly and casual. Even if you know what they're going to say, let them talk. Acknowledge what they're going to say. And they like to rally around people, not so much ideas, but around people. And they like to keep an atmosphere of being encouraging and affirming.
Yeah.
So this is so important that you recognize them for who they are, for what they've done.
Mm.
Give extra time for that. The D, on the other hand, huwag yung susobrahan nyo, may inis pa nga sa inyo. Sa high I, hindi. And then, how do you adapt to a high S, Rosan?
First you have to know that they're very accommodating and very accepting. So you don't want to pile too much on them because they'll take everything that you make them do. And like the S prefers to go by routine and predictable schedule. So you need to understand that about the S also. And then they'll always ask how. I think it annoys Omi when he says, "Oh, let's do this," and say, How are we gonna do that? I need to know how it works. I need to know what steps to take
Yeah,
to
I
get
don't I
there.
don't get annoyed.
Yung ganon. And then I also need, when you're dealing with an S, you need to give us enough time. When there's gonna be a change, give us time to adjust to it. And,
Yeah.
and it's even become worse with me because I have MS. I have a neurological disorder. So any change, it takes me a while to determine how am I going to do this. Paano ko to diskartehan? Paano ko to gagawin? There. How? So my question is always, how are we gonna do it?
And then I just wanted to share about this provide step-by-step approach. Corporately, we have a client, a pharma company that had lost market share, and then it was trying to recover, and they had a strategic plan that was being cascaded to the organization. One of the main things that management did that really meant a lot of difference was this was a management team that was all high D, high C, very task oriented. But when they surveyed the whole organization, 80% were high S. And so when they were asking us, what does this mean?
Yeah.
And we said, when we're cascading plans, let's make sure we answer the how questions. Let's not be impatient. Let's walk through them, walk the step-by-step process of how to get there. You know what? The result, another company did a post-mortem after that, and many of the employees said, we were able to achieve our targets because management listened to
Yes.
us and listened patiently.
Mhm.
So very important. So
Yeah.
giving enough time to adjust to changes.
Okay.
Adapting to the high C, very quality and detailed conscious. So these are the people who always ask why. Kung minsan parang makulit, but let's keep that in mind. They need the details. They're logical. They are distracted when we present too many ideas. They recognize that they need more time to analyze. And don't be surprised, they prefer working alone. And they don't like a show of emotion. They like to be diplomatic about things. So these are just a few of the things that we can do to make our relationships pandemic proof. Adapt to them, adapt to what they need. So additional motivational principles: a strength overused or used and inappropriate
There.
becomes your weakness. So keep that in mind. Second, We're not saying D is better, I is best, S is better. We're saying there's no single best or all-purpose motivational pattern. Different is not wrong.
Different
Different is
is
just
just
different.
different.
And very important to use this. Don't use your profile as an excuse for negative behavior. So what we don't like happening tonight is you, if you're a D, going to the people around you and say, pasensya kayo, D ako eh. Ganun lang pala. So sundin nyo ako. Hindi ganun. But let's not use it as an excuse for negative behavior. Hey, I'm going to ask you now to take a screenshot of this. I know that Trina and Elaine said that in 48 hours, you'll be receiving a link to recording of this, but you might want to take a screenshot of this because if you see yourself as high D, go to the D quadrant. It will give you options about some improvement areas for you so that you can adapt this and make your relationships pandemic proof. If you're high I, go to the I quadrant. If you're high S, go to the S quadrant. And if you're C, well, there are some of you who may even think that you are D and C or a combination of I and S. Fine, go to it. But the important thing is talk about this with it. If you're in family, talk about it among yourselves. If you're,
Even with your children,
yeah,
it
husband and
helps.
wife, yeah, it will help. If you're in work, oh, this can even become team norms. This can even be ways of working, di ba?
I also do this with my helper. It helps me because like there's times when I'm annoyed at her, then but when I sit down with her and find out what it is, what ang motivation niya or why she did this, why she didn't do this, it helps me. So I also make certain adjustments to her.
So you've all taken a screenshot because now we're going to go to the 4 Qs in helping you make your relationships pandemic proof or pandemics really.
The confusing.
Hey, I just want to end this portion by saying another verse from Paul to the Corinthians. To each one is given a manifestation of the Holy Spirit for the common good. What does it mean to us? The D, the I, the S, and the C's, these are very important, what do you call this? Very important manifestations of the Holy Spirit. And it's not just for us. They're meant for the common good. Okay? So, we're going now to the 4 Qs. 4 Qs.
4 Qs, okay. The 4 quotients. We use these 4 quotients to navigate life and relationships, and they are the following: no? IQ, intelligence quotient. You have EQ, emotional quotient. You have AQ, which is adversity quotient, and then SQ, which is spiritual quotient. So first go to the IQ. Yung IQ, intelligence quotient, many years ago, IQ used to be the sole determinant or the sole predictor of success. So much so that if we knew that a person had high IQ, we expected them to get ahead of the pack, to be ahead of the pack, to excel, to be promoted all the time, to make it go up and up the ladder of success. But we've all encountered people who are academically brilliant, but who are not successful. Academically brilliant, but they just want to stay home. They don't want a job. Academically brilliant, but they're socially inept. They don't know how to get along with people. So much for IQ, diba? I mean, it can only get you so far. So then the next one to take note of is emotional quotient. The term EQ was first coined by an Israeli clinical psychologist. His name was Reuven Bar-On, and he said his first theory was people with high EQ are these people who are good at delayed gratification. They don't need to be rewarded now. They can wait for a later time, which is almost always a better time to receive an award later. So ganon sila. And then 2 other people wrote on emotional quotient. Their names are Salovey and Mayer, John Mayer. They added to the theory of Reuven Bar-On, and they said, yung daw taong mataas ang EQ, hindi lang magaling sa delayed gratification, magaling din sila makisama. So very important thing to put in or to posit that high EQ people know how to get along with people. You put them in a social situation, they will not have a problem. They send out good vibes, the high EQ people. And then, ang talagang nag-popularize ng EQ was a man named Daniel Goleman. Daniel Goleman's addition to the whole shebang was, he said, high EQ people are good motivators. So they're not just good at delayed gratification. They're not just good with people. They're not just good at, they're not misfits, but they're also great motivators. So in a company, if you want to move forward, you want to hire people with high EQ, because these are the guys who are going to motivate people and rally them around where the company wants to move there. So that's the high EQ person. And the reason I'm giving you all these tidbits about each quotient is because it's very important when things are difficult to know how the different intelligences are at work, how it helps us adjust to one another. Now, adversity quotient was introduced to us by a man named Paul Stoltz, and he did a really extensive study. He has a book, Adversity Quotient. And according to Paul Stoltz, his first statement is every person goes through an average of 23 adversities a day.
Almost one every hour.
Yeah, so that's almost one every hour. So before you even logged in here, you passed so many adversities already. You went through so many difficult stuff already, so many difficult things already. And that's his main statement, that people go through different adversities. Therefore, you have to develop an adversity quotient. Whereas IQ, you are born with IQ, you can enhance it by taking tests and things like that, being trained, getting a tutor. EQ and AQ are largely learned. You pick it up from people. So it's not like you were born with high EQ or high AQ. Minamana mo, or you see it, people rub it off on you there. So the high AQ person's main goal is to keep on keeping on. The high AQ person will stay, will endure. These are the guys who endure. Like in a flood, they won't complain. They'll just do what needs to be done. In fire, they're the ones who bring the things out almost mechanically, because they just need to survive it. That's the of the AQ person. And now this one, the spiritual quotient for me, is the quotient that binds everything together to come up with something good, because the people with high SQ are the only ones or SQ is the only intelligence that acknowledges God. It's the only intelligence that acknowledges there is a purpose for all things. It's the only quotient that I understands the identity of a person, where we come from, why we do things there. Because ang high SQ, they tap into another dimension. It's not just what's happening here, but they tap into another dimension which is no longer seen. So yung high SQ people are the ones who like put everything together in a way that keeps you sane. So for me, it's the most important quotient, because IQ without SQ makes you condescending. Ang IQ na walang SQ, mayabang, mahangin. They're not able to get along with people. They don't care whether they get along or not, because there's no SQ. So we need the SQ to protect our relationships and to make it a nurturing place. Okay, so hindi lang galing, hindi lang diskarte, because EQ is called diskarte. Ngayon, yung high EQ person without SQ, they can become, like Omi said, a strength. If you overuse a strength, it can be
a weakness.
Okay, so the high EQ without SQ, pag hindi mo tinimplahan ng SQ ang EQ, the high EQ person becomes a flatterer. The high EQ person does not have a real stand, because lagi siyang gumigitna. Kung ano yung gustong marinig ng boss, kung anong gustong marinig ng asawa, oo lang siya ng oo, di okay lang yan. So they will not have a stand on anything, because they're always spent sitting. That's the danger with high EQ. If they're not ruled, if they're not governed by a high SQ. Okay? So that's the difference. Ngayon, ang high AQ naman, without SQ, the high AQ person becomes also condescending, becomes intolerant of people who aren't as strong as them. Okay, there are high AQ people who say, yan lang, iniiyakan mo? Or lalaki lang yan, boyfriend lang yan, or malayo yan sa bituka. Okay, the high AQ person who does not have SQ is really just like that. They're good at enduring something. They're good at at being nalalampasan nila yung mga pinagdadaanan nila, but they're not. They lack empathy. There, without SQ, the high AQ person has no empathy at all. And so that's also very negative, diba? So you need SQ to manage your AQ.
And Roseanne, why don't you share with them about in Roseanne's case, she has multiple sclerosis, which has become her adversity.
Yeah.
And we talk about what about her AQ? Without the SQ, how would that affect you?
The EQ is the AQ is a survivor, and the EQ is also kind of a survivor. But a person with SQ, high SQ, becomes an overcomer. So it's impossible to overcome something or to live above adversity. Like mine it's a neurological disorder, and I've had it for 34 years. And often people ask me, how have you not lost heart in all these 34 years? It's every day, it's pain, every day it's disability. And yet I'm able to see that there's a purpose for this, and that I really believe it's my SQ. It's not so much that I'm good. It's just that, you choose to believe in something higher than yourself. You choose to believe that there's a purpose behind even adversity, even something ugly like MS.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Roseanne. So these are just some things that we wanted to share about. Yeah, tidbits about the 4Qs. And Roseanne was saying that we should have this slide towards the close of this about being the right person.
Being the right person. In any relationship, pag tumagal na over the years, it becomes tiring. Relating to one another becomes tiring. And like in a marriage, sometimes I've heard a lot of wives say, minsan daw naiisip nila, did I marry the right person? Doesn't seem like I married the right person. And I always say, it's more important to be the right person than to find the right person. So finding is one thing, but being the right person is the right thing to do.
Yes.
It's the right stance to take.
And I think that's one of the key takeaways that we want to impart to you, that keeping relationships pandemic proof is about being the right person. It's not like waiting for the other person to change, but us being the right person. And we're in the last two slides, and we just wanted to, just by way of a summary, we're saying some faith-based principles. In Psalms 139, it says that we are all fearfully and wonderfully made. As we go about in our relationships, family, personal, business, recognize that we are all fearfully and wonderfully made. And like we said earlier, outdo one another in showing honor. Mauna na tayo in looking out for the interests of others. And the third bullet is very important. Whether we like it or not, we will be offended. And also the other way, whether we like it or not, we will offend others. And, when I find it difficult to forgive someone, I remind myself of Psalms 130. It says, if you, Lord, should mark my guilt, none will survive. But with you is found forgiveness and fullness of redemption. And I also find it helpful in Proverbs 11 that says, it does you so much good to overlook offenses. You want to keep your relationships pandemic proof? These are some of the things that we want to impart. And finally, Psalms 133 says, behold how good and pleasant it is when brethren and sisterin dwell together in unity, for there the Lord commands his blessings. Why are we putting this here? Keeping relationships pandemic proof is about keeping unity. And when there is unity, Psalms 133 says, it triggers the Lord to bless.
Yes.
It triggers the Lord to bless. So here we're going to end here, Elaine. We're going to ask you to type in your questions if you have any.
Yeah.
And thank you for
Yeah.
spending this evening with us. We believe that you are here because you have relationships that you value and that you want to keep this
Yes.
pandemic proof. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Omi and Rosan. Very, very powerful sharing session and sharing, and lots of inputs. A lot, very enriching. I feel so blessed and feel so
Oh, thank you.
rich with insights and teachings from you. Thank you. I'm just gonna read some of the chat here from Gina Ilarde. Wow, super insightful. Thank you so much po. From
Gene.
Ivy, thank you so much, Sir Omi and Ma'am Rosan. From Jackie, thank you very much for your time and for sharing this presentation. I enjoyed your talks and will definitely apply the learning. God bless you both. And
Oh,
from RB, I think this is Reggie. Thank you so much. I echo Elaine's positive comment. There's one question, he said. Is it safe to assume that we can only be the right person also to certain people and not everyone we meet?
I,
Otherwise, I think it would be consuming for us too.
no,
very
no,
true.
no.
Yeah.
Very consuming if you think you have to
Be the right
be the
person to
right
everyone.
person to everyone. It's about knowing. It's about knowing who God wants in your life.
Yeah.
You can't like just open it up to everyone. It's not.
Tama ka, RB.
So thank you for that. I have one question. Do these principles apply to both business and family relationships?
Of course,
Yes,
of
yes.
course. Business, pagka hindi mo ito in-apply, no good strategy, no good product will
No.
work. Relationships are primary.
Mm.
And then one last question, because very timely, talking about pandemic. What are the effects on relationships and all the principles and teaching that you taught during this pandemic, and how do we counter?
Oh, for Rasan and I, it was a good time for us to apply what we've always been learning.
What we've been telling
Yeah,
people.
what we've been telling people. And it's good to see it at work. To see it at work, yeah.
I think the pandemic is what brings everything
To
to
its
sharper
basic.
focus, to its
Yeah.
base, to its proper focus. Kasi parang like Omi and I were just home every day, 24
Yes.
hours.
Na-test ba ng husto?
Yes.
Na-apply ng husto?
When you're not like when he goes highs off to the office and I'm home, or I go out and he goes out, it helps in a relationship to have some break time, diba? But the pandemic has really just forced us to be together the whole day. So you really have to be mindful of how you're gonna handle each other there.
Yeah. And back to basics tayo lahat. On the other hand, those who were in virtual, yung mga isolated, yung mga separated because of, the social distancing, not allowed or restricted to go out. So virtual communication lahat. How do these teachings apply then, or these principles apply?
One of the things that we say, as aside from applying this, is recognize that the virtual communication channel misses out on a lot of cues. So
Yes.
yung mga unang you asked a question earlier, Elaine, what are the signs of a good relationship? Communication, di ba, open communication. I think during this pandemic, when the virtual communication channel is open to many of us, we have to be aware that many cues are absent, and so we have to probe more into the communication.
Okay.
Also,
So
we have to be thankful that there's such a thing as the internet. Because kung walang internet, we would really be totally, cut off from
Buti
each
na
other.
lang. Oo,
So it's
salamat.
yes, that's the advantage or benefit of technology.
That
Yes.
has its limitations, So like you can't see like kunyari, and Omen, I give talks to a real live audience. It's much easier kasi you see them, you see their faces and they're cheering you, ganyan. But giving a talk like this, marami talagang nami-miss eh.
Yes.
Oh, there.
That's great. All right. So thank you again. Thank you so much, Dr. Omi Romero and Rosan Romero, the husband and wife tandem. Join us next time, and good night, everyone.